A breaking news alert flashes across screens, announcing the emergence of a new virus at an airport. The infected quickly turn incredibly violent, and soon the airport is engulfed in flames. 2 months later, the virus has become a global catastrophe, engulfing the entire world. It transforms people into ferilous, savage, zombie-like creatures. The government attempts to impose a quarantine, but many citizens vehemently protest, demanding rights for the ferilous, insisting they are still human. The military is forced to patrol the streets, clashing with civilians in a futile attempt to send them home, only exacerbating the chaos. One afternoon, all TV channels suddenly lose their signal. Abigail and her brother receive a call from their pilot father, who explains he's busy helping people and assures them they'll be safe with their mother. Just then, a noise from upstairs sends the family fleeing their home. As they're about to get into their car, a feral lunges out, tackling and killing their mother. Abigail instantly hides beneath the car, forced to witness the feral attack her brother as well. When a police siren wails nearby, the feral retreats. Afterward, Abigail hears her brother call her name, but her mother, now a feral, finishes him off. As Abigail cries out, her transformed mother hears her and pursues her, only to be shot by Cassius. He rescues Abigail, and she embraces him in thanks. Her brother begins to transform too, so Cassius has Abigail close her eyes before he also shoots the boy. 10 years later, the world is in a desolate, post-apocalyptic state. Few humans remain, and nature has reclaimed the cities. In the forest, a now teenage Abigail and Cassius are hunting. It's clear Cassius has trained Abigail thoroughly, as she takes down a deer with a perfectly aimed shot, though Cassius chides her for her haste, urging patience. As night falls, the pair sets up camp, and Cassius meticulously checks all the tripwires. A few hours into their sleep, a tripwire triggers, startling Cassius awake. He emerges from the tent to investigate, finding some fuzz caught in the wire. Then he hears nearby noises and quickly moves to calm the horses, drawing his gun just in time to shoot an approaching feral. This was likely a scout from a larger horde, so Cassius wakes Abigail, signaling it's time to leave. For the next few days, the duo continues their journey, and whenever they stop to rest the horse, Cassius resumes Abigail's training. One afternoon, they halt their ride upon spotting a car nearby and swiftly ready their weapons. They observe a man shooting a feral while a second creature approaches him from behind. Abigail intends to help, but her shot is too hasty, hitting both the man and the oncoming feral. The creature from the car emerges to feed, and Cassius is forced to dispatch it. Afterward, Abigail searches the car for supplies, and Cassius ends the poor man's suffering with a machete before taking his shoes. A radio in the car attempts to contact the driver, and Abigail wants to warn them about the approaching feral horde, but Cassius tells her to ignore it. At that moment, more cars appear, and a group of survivors surrounds them, weapons drawn. They examine the dead body, seeing a human was the killer, and assume the duo committed the act solely to rob him. When their leader threatens them, Cassius and Abigail attack the two closest individuals, disarming them to steal their weapons. Tensions are high as both sides point their arms at each other, so a pregnant woman named Megan steps out of a car, attempting to de-escalate the situation. Just then, the horses whinny in distress, and a feral horde emerges around them. Everyone immediately opens fire, killing as many ferals as possible to keep them at bay. There are too many of them, however, and they still manage to close in, forcing Cassius and Abigail to resort to their blades, fighting hand to hand. The other survivors, however, are only proficient with guns, so soon the ferals begin killing them one by one. A woman prepares a Molotov cocktail but is attacked by a feral, causing it to fall onto a car and trigger a small explosion that throws Cassius back. One of the survivors is bitten, so he attempts to self-terminate, but he's out of bullets and transforms instead. The leader is seized by a particularly large feral and slowly beaten to death. Megan's husband, David, is also tackled by a feral, but he manages to kick it off. Abigail helps the couple into a car, and Cassius kills a few more creatures before joining them. As they drive off, a feral is on the car roof, so Cassius abruptly stops the vehicle to dislodge it. Abigail seizes the chance to grab their belongings before they finally escape. The large feral notices they killed his mate and roars in fury. Once on the road, Abigail checks their ammunition and realizes they've lost most of it. Megan explains they were heading to a riverside colony and that she's 35 weeks pregnant, so the baby is due soon. However, Abigail and Cassius believe searching for colonies isn't worth it, they've seen many, and none ever survive. Suddenly, the car stalls, and the group discovers the engine is dead, leaving them no choice but to continue on foot. Moments later, the group reaches an abandoned town and agrees to spend the night there. They search a building to ensure no ferals are present and set up camp. Megan offers to share her food, but Cassius and Abigail only eat what they hunt to avoid potential infection. The couple explains they contacted the colony by radio, so they know it has ample supplies and doctors. It's a week's journey to reach it, meaning the risk is high. In turn, Abigail tells them that she and Cassius are attempting to reach the west coast and escape to the islands by boat. After Cassius sets up the tripwires outside, he produces a map and outlines the path to the colony for the couple. However, he refuses to accompany them, stating the horde will return for revenge. Abigail speaks to Cassius privately, insisting they should help the couple and that perhaps this colony will be different. An argument ensues, but Cassius still refuses to help. In the middle of the night, the horde finds the broken car and follows the road into town. Meanwhile, the men can't sleep, so Cassius shows David that he always keeps a bullet in his pocket in case he's bitten. All David has is a cigarette and a twisted ankle. They chat for a while and eventually bond, so Cassius agrees to help them reach the colony. The next morning, Abigail hears a noise and goes downstairs to investigate. A feral suddenly attacks her, making her drop her gun, but Abigail quickly kills it with her machete. A second feral begins chasing her up the stairs, and Abigail uses the broken window to hurl the creature out of the building. She almost falls too, but Cassius catches her just in time. By the time the horde reaches the building, the group is already gone. A feral trips on the wire, causing a small explosion that kills it. Sometime later, Abigail recognizes the area they're in and remembers a nearby civil airport where her father kept a small plane. Cassius wants to keep moving, believing an airport would make them easy targets for the horde, not to mention most planes are likely gone. However, Abigail and the couple vote in favor of going there, leaving Cassius no choice but to follow. After walking for a while, they find an old building and a car with a recently shot man. Cassius tells Abigail to check the building for supplies but refuses to actually stop to rest, as he suspects they're not alone. Abigail only finds some coffee and doesn't see the family hiding in one of the rooms. Cassius checks the car's trunk and finds a wheelchair, which they use to transport Megan. After the group leaves, the horde discovers the building and completely massacres the family in a matter of seconds. When they finally reach the airport, there are no planes in sight. David and Cassius begin arguing about their next move, but Abigail interrupts them when she finds her father's hangar. Fortunately, a plane is inside, and David possesses the mechanical knowledge needed to fix it. While he works, Cassius and Abigail search the building. Abigail finds a picture of her with her dad on the floor and replaces it on the wall. At that moment, the horde arrives, so the group rushes to board the plane, even though it's not yet ready. Cassius opens fire to slow the horde down, and David manually moves the propeller to help the plane start. Abigail's flying knowledge is vague, and the plane is moving slowly, allowing the horde to get too close. Thankfully, she finds the right button soon, and the plane begins to gain speed. A feral still manages to cling to the door, and Cassius is forced to shoot it to make it fall. Then the plane takes off, and the group escapes. However, they only fly for a few moments before the plane begins to fail and descend. Abigail tries to land it, but the plane crashes into a cluster of trees and plummets to the ground. Luckily, it lands on its wheels, and everyone survives with only minor injuries. A train station is nearby, so after confirming it's empty, they decide to rest there. Cassius opens the map and discovers it'll take them 2 days to reach the colony, so they'll leave first thing in the morning. Abigail counts their ammo and realizes there isn't much left. Megan and Cassius share some food, and Cassius admits she reminds him of his wife. He reveals he had to kill her infected family and that later she took her own life, unable to bear it anymore. Cassius also shares the story of a bitten kid in his hometown. Since the wound didn't hit an artery, it took him a couple of days to fully transform. Meanwhile, David finds a private spot to check on his ankle, revealing it's not twisted. The wound is actually a bite, and David knows he should self-terminate, so he raises his gun, but he can't bring himself to do it. The next day, the group continues moving. As they walk under the blazing sun, David feels quite ill, and Cassius notices blood on his leg. He waits until the women are far ahead to push David against a tree and examine his ankle, confirming his suspicion. Cassius gives him the option to tell everyone on his own terms, but if he doesn't do it soon, he'll shoot him. In the evening, the group finds a house with the lights on. As they draw closer, a voice asks them what they want. Cassius believes it's too dangerous, but Abigail approaches the house and explains they need help, swearing they mean no harm and mentioning the pregnant woman. Norton opens the door, holding them at gunpoint as he instructs them to leave all their weapons in the chest outside. Then he invites them inside, displaying a very sweet and welcoming demeanor. Cassius points out the house has power, and Norton explains he's an engineer, having built several devices that provide electricity and hot water. He also mentions a wife but ignores Megan when she asks where she is. Norton shares his bread and vegetables with them, and Abigail is happy to take a shower. Cassius can finally connect his laptop and look at old pictures, revealing his wife had been pregnant before the pandemic. When he checks on Megan, she admits she's scared because she hasn't felt the baby moving since they arrived at this house. She makes Cassius promise that if anything happens to her, he'll protect her child. Afterward, Norton shares a drink with everyone and explains he's lived there for 20 years, but his wife is no longer around. He's heard about the colony on the radio but isn't interested in joining them because he prefers being alone. Then Norton begins ranting about people being overly obsessed with returning to the old ways and how humanity deserved the pandemic because they destroyed the planet and their ethics. He even compares the virus to evolution, asserting that only the strong have survived. Cassius notices a strange knife on a table, but Norton quickly takes it away. Feeling sicker by the second, David rushes to the bathroom and observes the infection spreading. When he comes out, he discovers his friends are unconscious because Norton spiked their drinks. Norton, now in a lab coat and holding a strange machine, can tell David is infected and activates the machine, which emits a noise that causes David to collapse in pain. Norton explains the device is like a dog whistle that only affects the infected before David passes out. Meanwhile, the horde has found the train station and continues their search. Moments later, David wakes to discover the entire group has been tied up in a basement. Norton is there, taking notes for his experiment and revealing that he has his infected wife locked up in a cage. He lets her out and controls her with his device, making her attack the group. Cassius and Abigail kick her a few times to keep her back, so the woman goes after David, who manages to break his ropes to fight back. They only struggle for a few seconds before David overpowers her, and Norton is forced to use his machine to stop him from rescuing the others. However, David isn't completely transformed yet, so he's able to push through the pain and break the rest of the ropes. Cassius finds a gun and tries shooting Norton, who immediately flees. The group rushes upstairs and locks the door behind them, so Norton begins hitting it with an axe. Abigail steals Norton's car keys, and Cassius retrieves their belongings before punching David. He wants to shoot him now, but the women convince him to wait. On their way to the car, Megan discovers that her water has broken. Norton emerges to watch the group drive away while his wife growls at him. When the car reaches the forest, the horde finally finds them and gives chase. The group can see lights in the distance, indicating they've found the colony. They try driving as fast as possible, but unfortunately, the road is blocked by a tree, and they must continue on foot. The horde is closing in, so they open fire, but David runs out of ammo. Since he'll transform soon anyway, he tells the others to go while he buys them some time. The couple shares a heartfelt goodbye, and before the trio leaves, Cassius gives David his last bullet. Once they're far enough, David smokes his cigarette and begins fighting the ferals hand to hand. He manages to defeat a few of them, but the big feral surprises him from behind and breaks his neck. The rest of the ferals chase after the other survivors, so Abigail is forced to open fire to protect Cassius as he carries Megan. She also begins yelling for help and attracts the attention of the guards at the colony gate, who quickly shoot all the ferals chasing after the trio. When the rest of the horde sees the bodies and the lights, they immediately retreat back to the forest. Afterward, the heroes are allowed into the colony, and Megan is taken to the infirmary where a midwife cares for her. The next morning, after meeting the colony leader, Cassius tells Abigail that they should leave soon because humans can't be trusted. However, Abigail is tired of running and ignores him. Then Cassius talks to the midwife, who tells him the baby is fine, but the mother only has a few hours left. Cassius visits his friend and learns that the baby is a girl named Hope. Megan reminds him of his promise and gifts him her family locket before finally dying. Meanwhile, Norton arrives at the forest and finds all the bodies. Wandering around allows him to see the colony as well. At that moment, the horde attempts to attack him, but he immediately controls them with his device and announces it's time for revenge. Back in the colony, Cassius is caring for Hope and pondering his next move. Abigail bonds with the local teenagers and joins a small party in the evening. Alcohol is passed around, and 2 guards fall asleep, so a few teens seize the opportunity to enter a tunnel. Abigail follows them and discovers a strange remote control, but when she touches it, Roderick stops her. He explains that the entire boat town is mined, and the remote will blow it up if the ferals manage to invade it. Humans can be safe from this explosion by using a hatch on the ground that will lead them to an abandoned dam. The next morning, Norton spots a guard on a boat and asks for his help. After dispatching him, a feral leaps into the water and climbs into the colony to kill the other guard too. Now Norton can unleash the entire horde to attack. As survivors are killed throughout the settlement, a few armed people emerge to fight. Abigail saves Roderick from a feral before assigning tasks to the teen gang. Those with weapons must find higher ground to open fire, and Roderick must guide survivors to the dam while she goes looking for Cassius. As panic grips the colony, the midwife takes Hope from Cassius so he can search for Abigail. The armed individuals are starting to run low on ammo, and the colony leader tries to flee, but a feral immediately kills him. Abigail shoots a feral that nearly kills 2 young girls, while Cassius stabs a creature to save 2 teenagers. Then Abigail and Cassius finally reunite and begin fighting the ferals together, using a combination of guns and hand-to-hand combat. When they see an opening, they try to join the evacuation, but Cassius gets distracted when he sees Norton, and a feral tackles him down. Cassius manages to stab the creature, only to be found by Norton, who starts kicking him while talking about creating a safer world. After some struggle, Cassius manages to stand up and pushes Norton against a wall to smash the device repeatedly until it's broken. Then Cassius runs back to Abigail while the ferals pounce on Norton to kill him. The survivors finish crossing the tunnel and make it to the dam, so they ask Roderick to activate the explosives, but he hesitates because Abigail isn't out yet. In the colony, the big feral tries attacking Abigail, so Cassius hits him with an oar. When the creature falls, Abigail notices his bracelet and is horrified to realize this is her father. The shock leaves her frozen, so Cassius has to snap her out of it and drag her to the hatch. The duo enters the tunnel just before Roderick, tired of waiting, blows the place up, killing every single feral in the colony. Afterward, the survivors discover an infected man among them. As Cassius tries to calm him down, a feral leaps out of nowhere and kills the guy. Then it turns to attack Cassius, triggering a fight. They continuously hit each other until they fall to the ground, where the feral almost bites Cassius. This time, Abigail is patient and waits for the right moment to shoot, killing the creature without harming her friend. The survivors watch the colony burn and wonder what to do next. Abigail tells them they can build a new home in the dam, and Cassius reveals he stole Norton's notebook with the instructions to build a generator.